What is disclosure? Disclosure is the idea that as a trans person, you owe it to a person you're possibly entering into a relationship with to let them know that you're in fact trans. This is specifically true if you're someone like me who passes very well, or if you're someone who may have not had surgeries and you're interested in getting romantically involved with a partner. Disclosure is often used as a means of violence against trans people. There's this idea that we don't disclose, particularly if you're a trans woman, to men who you get into a relationship with. And that's how something called a trap came to be. The trap is the idea of a gorgeous woman who you want to get into bed with, and right as you're about to, they reveal that they're trans. And for a cis man, they feel trapped because obviously they can't not fuck this woman. They don't have the ability not to do that. And so they're trapped into feeling like they must. Unfortunately, it's become an issue where if we don't disclose, we're accused of lying or being predatory, which is where a lot of transphobic laws about trans people come from. But if you do disclose, you run the risk of putting yourself in a very dangerous position. So the question becomes, should you disclose, and when? And is it really going to protect you? I've always sort of felt that disclosure was really important to me. And when I started online dating before I met my boyfriend, it was really, really important to me that it not only be in my profile, but it was something that I said to him kind of repeatedly throughout the course of our conversation. I wanted to make it clear that I was a trans person and that you were actually okay with that. Because I never wanted it to be said after the fact, if something, God forbid, happened to me, I never wanted it to be said that I didn't inform him. Because unfortunately, a lack of disclosure is often used as a justification for violence against us, including murder. Now, the problem with that, of course, is that if you look at the historical evidence of trans-related murders, more often than not, those trans people did disclose. These are trans women who were in relationships with their ultimate killer. These are people who they knew very intimately who this person was, and in a lot of cases were looking specifically for trans women. It's unclear, and the reasons vary why those men later turned out to kill those women, but generally speaking, it's the thought that they were embarrassed, that their friends might have found out, and suddenly they found themselves feeling like, I don't want to be seen as gay or something like that. And suddenly, now they're killing this person they supposedly love. And that's a real problem trans people face. So then the question becomes, if it's not going to protect me, do I even really need to disclose my transition? Besides, I am a woman. What's there to disclose? I think for men especially, it's very important that we as trans people disclose everything. But actually, I would say even for trans men who date women, it's very important you disclose your trans status. Not simply because of, putting aside the safety idea. I think at a certain point, if you are having a possibility of starting a real relationship with someone, it's not the greatest to start out on half-truths. It isn't that you're not a man or a woman, it's that you're not telling someone kind of an important factor about your life. For me personally, my transition has always felt like a non-important factor, but it's always been something that I knew I had to tell when it came to dating, and especially when it comes to sex. That's kind of non-negotiable as far as I'm concerned, but that's a whole nother topic as well. For me, the topic of disclosure comes down to the idea that I don't ever want there to be a time where there was any question that I was honest about who I was. Yes, I'm a woman, but I'm a trans woman who has not yet had surgery. And I think it's important that you know going in what you're getting into, because I don't want there to be the idea that you're expecting something different from what you ultimately end up getting. Because some people have acted very irrationally. And I think that's very, very dangerous. It's unfortunate that trans women feel like they're kind of locked into a perpetual, I'm damned if I do, damned if I don't mentality. If you don't disclose, you run the risk of being murdered. But if you do disclose, you also run the risk of physical violence and murder. There's been plenty of trans people who just existed. They weren't even trying to get attention from a male, but because of the nature of their existence and that a man saw them and catcalled them and then realized they were trans, some women have found that their ultimate end. And that's a disgusting fact about our world. I think personally, disclosure comes down to how you want to do it. I think it's one of those things that I think it should be done. I'm someone who is in a better position when it comes to something like this, and I have a lot of privilege in this regard. I pass for cis very well, and not only that, I'm also a white trans woman who has some amount of money, and unfortunately a lot of the people who are the highest victims of trans-related violence are trans women of color, and often poor trans women of color. I think it's important to note that disclosure is a complicated topic. It's not something that can be answered in one YouTube video, and maybe not even in several dozen YouTube videos. People's reasons for disclosing or not disclosing are varied and very complex. But my thought for me personally has always been, it's easier to disclose and get it out of the way than to try and have that conversation after you're already in a relationship with someone. My thoughts also include that if you're going to disclose and you're potentially going on a first date with someone, you might want to do so in a public environment. Chances are you're going to be less likely to be in a dangerous situation if you're in public with a person. Disclosure might be better to do online as well. Online dating is very common and a very popular practice, and that might be the best way to go. If you can find a way to disclose to that person online, you might save yourself a lot of hassle and heartache. It never gets easier, really, to disclose to someone that you're trans. I feel like in a lot of ways, I've been fortunate enough that I can talk about it online like this. I'm very, very public with most of my friends, although there are some times where I don't know if it's really necessary. And it's one of those conversations that at what point do you really bring it up? At what point in a potential relationship do you even find the way to say this? I always feel like the sooner the better if you're going to do it, if that's something that you believe you should do. If you can do it in a way that kind of just rips off the Band-Aid, doesn't make a big deal out of it, maybe you'll have better luck. It's easier to just say, hey, I'm trans, than to try and beat around the bush and make it difficult for yourself. It's unfortunate that this is still a conversation that needs to be had, but I want to make it clear that disclosure is still a very serious and important topic. And unfortunately, I don't think there's ever going to be an easy answer to this. I wish I could tell you that there was a foolproof method to let people know that didn't put your life in danger, but unfortunately, that is a very harsh reality that trans people have to deal with. I wish that weren't the case. I really desperately wish that were not the case. Anyway, thank you all so much for watching, and until next time, this has been a talk. Bye.